2020, 60% of the country said the country was on the wrong track. In 2024, the data we're getting out right now is now 70%. We have actually over 3/4 of the vote in right now, and Trump is winning there by almost 10 points. We're seeing Trump doing far better with Black voters, and particularly Black men doing better with independent voters, and even with white college-educated women than he did in 2020. Trump is on pace to win the popular vote by less than a point. Remember, even when he won in 2016, he did not win the popular vote, so this would be significant.
Well, those were the fast-paced, incessant number-crunching skills of journalist Jessica Taylor, who joined ITV News on election night in the US back in November. And today she is here in the flesh in London for a very special edition of Talking Politics USA. Now, Jessica is an analyst for the Cook Political Report in the US. And to be quite honest, Jessica, I can't wait to get chatting about what you thought we were getting in President Trump 2.0 and what we have ended up getting. So, Jessica, as I've said, we're very, very lucky to have you. And you've been getting a fair few tasters of British life since you've been here. You've been here for what, nearly a week now, I think?
In London for I think 5 days, and then I spent a week up in Scotland, so I'm seeing a lot of the UK.
And I've heard that you were doing punting in Cambridge yesterday.
I did. I went punting. I did not punt the boat myself. I did not trust
You've had afternoon tea.
I did tea. I love high tea. Even got a fascinator for it. So I love British culture, and so it's exciting. It was exciting to work with the team on ITV on election night so much because I do love British history and British politics, and got to go to Parliament today, which has been on my bucket list.
What did you make of our Parliament then? You got to see Prime Minister's questions. What did you think of the argy-bargy? And if you don't understand argy-bargy, I mean like the arguments that are going on.
Yeah, I mean, it is more, I think, structured in the U.S. We don't have anything like that. I think that the arguing goes on now on cable news
or social media.
Yeah, or social media, exactly. So to kind of see that banter back and forth. And of course, Keir Starmer was coming back from the G7, so the Deputy Prime Minister was there. But, I think just seeing the different constituencies and sort of how they ask the questions, I mean, it was exciting. Like, they're going at each other. And like I said, we kind of don't. Both houses of Congress are sort of more structured in that way, and when someone does kind of, it has gotten more partisan, certainly in the past 10 years since Trump. I mean, this Monday, on my birthday, actually.
You're here basically, aren't you? Because it's your 40th birthday treat to self. Yes. But it also marks a decade of Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought of that. I've spent the majority of my career now covering Trump and sort of politics in the age of Trump, which has just been, you look back and the Republican Party has transformed so much over the past 10 years. I mean, really in 2016, no one really expected him to win. And I think that we thought, okay, the Republican Party, they've had this Trump experiment, they'll step back from it. But
an experiment, that's a very good way of putting it. I really thought the same. Oh, well, we've done that, we've passed that, we will not return.
Right, yeah, but I mean, he ended up winning, and that was a surprise to even many on his team. You could sort of see that they were sort of struggling sort of with the governing part. He's good at the campaigning, he's good at the rallies and things, but, governing is a much different thing. And I think the very first Trump administration, we kind of had this joke there that they would talk about, it was going to be infrastructure week. We're going to talk about these things. Every week was going to be infrastructure week. It was sort of a running gag. And something else would happen. He would put something on social media. I had like alerts on my phone for Twitter. Now he's on Truth Social and different things. Of course, he left there. But, the whole day could revolve around a tweet that he sent around. It was just fast-paced into the early morning, late night. It was just a pace of government that I don't think any of us were used to. Coming into this term, I think it was not a surprise to me that he won when you looked at the polling.
I mean, you called it pretty early for us.
Yeah, and there was clearly, they had plans, and they have put a lot of these plans in place very quickly.
They've had time to think about it.
They've had 4 years to think about it. And, Democrats talked a lot about Project 2025, and there are aspects of that certainly that they have implemented. I mean, Trump saw a mandate, particularly on immigration, to go in and have these, sort of radical enforcements. And he saw that. And I think it is because, as I said there, it's not just that he won the electoral vote. He won the popular vote this time. And, a lot of times we don't see the presidents as legitimate in that way until they do that. George W. Bush lost the popular vote the first time, won it the second time in 2004. So I think Trump certainly sees a mandate to go forward because, you sort of can't call him an accidental president anymore, especially not, he's only the second president to ever lose and then come back to win again. So they're putting these things in place. I mean, it's moved at a breakneck pace, especially when you had Elon Musk and Doge going and just ripping departments apart.
Last November, what kind of Trump did you think you were going to get this time? And how, now what you've actually got?
I think I'm not surprised by sort of what he's doing. I think I am not, maybe the American public is, because there have been stories, especially when it comes to immigration. There was a story, I believe it was like a diner in Missouri somewhere, that a woman was arrested there because she was undocumented. And, very conservative town voted for Trump, something like 70-80%. And, these people, very conservative people that voted for Trump, they were like, I thought he was just going to go after the criminals and different things, like the people who are really bad people. Like, she's a hard worker, we love her and different things. And so they really rallied to kind of get her back, and she was released. But I mean, it's not just people who have criminal convictions that he's going after. And of course, there are big concerns about agriculture, farm workers at this time. I think that Trump also overpromises on a lot of things where, he said, I'm going to come in and on day one, I'll
end the Ukraine war.
I'll end the Ukraine war.
Hours. This is actually what I did want to talk to you about, because he got his second term on promises that, exactly as you said, I'll sort out the wars, be kind of non-interventionist America. But, in the last 6 days or so, we are now the US is now on the precipice of getting involved in Israel's war with Iran that's erupted. Right. How do you think that this will play out with the voters? I mean, the MAGA, the die-hard MAGAs, they did not want this. They don't want. Surely they don't want him to bomb Iran.
This is the rare place I have seen a split with his faithful. People that have backed him, no matter what. People like Tucker Carlson used to be on Fox News that have spoken out against this. Because Trump boasted that I was the only president that didn't start any wars and different things. But you're right. I mean, we've seen the talks there with Ukraine. We always knew that Trump had, a tendency to praise Putin and to cozy up to him. Watching the Oval Office interaction that he had with Zelensky was just stunning when you look at where American foreign policy has been back to Reagan and different things, even before that. But you're right. I mean, Israel is our staunch ally. He campaigned on that. He campaigned very much on, he even moved the embassy in Israel when he was the president first time. He's not been shy that he's a very staunch ally of Israel. And then I think the question is, Israel now sort of turning to Iran, what are we going to follow? And just the repercussions of that, I think that people are just now sorting out. That means Iran has said, we will retaliate on U.S. military bases. And, there's two fronts there. You're talking about Ukraine and Russia, and then now you're talking about the Middle East. And so you have these wars that are still going on. And how much is the U.S. going to get involved? I mean, one thing I have learned about covering Donald Trump for 10 years is you never know what he's going to do. He's unpredictable.
So what are the issues, I suppose, for our audience, for the British? What are the issues that that are energizing and polarizing people and voters out in the States that we will kind of grasp and understand?
I mean, of course, we had protests, very big protests this past weekend with, Trump had this big military parade that he has wanted for years. They sort of vetoed the plan the first term. He talked about sort of seeing Bastille Day in France, and he wanted it to be like that. He said, we'll celebrate the Army's 150th birthday, and, we'll have it on Flag Day. Well, Flag Day also happens to be his birthday. So, it was sort of a question of, who is this really for and different things. But so you had these sort of No Kings protests that really...
They were everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. I mean, but... he even said, I'll go after the protesters if they come in D.C. So there were a lot of protesters in other major cities and things. So I think it's sort of what they see as government, as overreach of the executive branch, which Trump has pushed the executive branch to the brink, to where he is, ignoring court rulings, how far is the Constitution going to be stretched, I think is a legitimate question. But then, the big bill that he wants to get through right now, the big beautiful bill. The big beautiful bill.
Is it beautiful?
It's certainly big. And I think a lot of people were still not even figuring out what's in it,
Can you tell me what it's in?
Well, he wants to, it's extending the tax cuts that he had during his first term is the signature thing. But, it is more favorable to higher income classes to an extent. And the biggest thing is how they're paying for this is cuts to Medicaid, the low income program and things.
But they're his hardcore voters, aren't they?
Well, that's the thing. Yes, you are seeing some pushback from even very conservative senators. Josh Hawley of Missouri. He was someone that was, caught sort of at the Capitol, even like egging on the protesters and different things. So he's hardcore MAGA, and he's voiced concerns about this and someone like Jim Justice has, a former governor, now senator in West Virginia, one of the poorest states in the country, how this could affect, Republicans are saying, well, we're only kicking off illegal immigrants, we're cutting people that don't deserve it, or, instituting work requirements. But some of the cuts could also, with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare also did, was allowed states to get money to expand Medicaid in their states. That money could very well go away. So the programs that states have implemented, they have to find different ways to pay for. So there's a real question about what these cuts are going to cover. It's passed the House very narrowly. Now it's in the Senate, and it is meeting, I think, more resistance in the Senate. They can afford to lose 4 votes on it. And you have 2 very moderate senators, one who's up for re-election, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski. But again, you do have Republicans that are voicing concerns on this. So what will the Senate bill come out, and can they sort of merge the two and find something? Trump wants it by July 4th. Big symbolic day. He likes these symbolic days.
He likes an occasion.
But the Senate moves slower than the House. Congress was not designed to move fast, and Trump wants these things to move fast.
Yeah, he likes to move at a rate of knots. How popular is he? I think that's one of the things, and I talk quite regularly to our correspondents on talking politics, and that one of them is Robert Moore. He's been out there for years, and he quite often
Robert on
the night, and he quite often talks about the die-hard MAGA, and that they are kind of an immovable feast.
Yeah.
And Dan, our correspondent out there, we spoke very recently, and he was talking about Trump at this point in his presidency is the most unpopular any president has ever been. I don't know whether that's what, I think that's what he was saying, but just, is he unpopular, popular, and how is it going to play out as we head towards the midterms? Because we're galloping towards them.
Yeah, we have seen his numbers. The economy has been Trump's strength, especially when you compare it to Biden. And so we have seen those numbers drop. We have seen even his numbers drop on approval on immigration as these things have happened. Now, the immigration still remains higher, and it's still higher than where Democrats are in immigration. Right. But overall, he's never been broadly popular. But I think what helped Trump the most was that Biden was so unpopular and was seen as not competent to be president, really, and that the economy was struggling. And even, Biden could point to, certainly there were good economic indicators, but when prices of groceries were going up, when inflation was so high, people don't vote based on, the stock market index or different things. They vote on, I am able to buy less for my family while my salary is not going up. And so I think that there was also an expectation that Trump was going in the same way that he said he would end the, Russia-Ukraine conflict. There's no magic button that you can push on the economy. Trump's also been very frustrated. He wants the Fed to lower interest rates.
How do you think it's going to work out as we head towards the midterms? Do you think that the Democrats have even a sniff of a chance of flipping the House or the Senate?
Yeah, they have a very good chance of flipping the House. When we look historically, the president's party loses seats. And in his first midterm election in 2018, Democrats took back the House. The problem for Trump is that, and Obama had this problem too, actually, his base voters didn't come out when he's not on the ballot. Trump he's not able to sort of transfer that loyalty that the MAGA base has to other candidates. And so I think that's the concern for Republicans in this election. But Democrats are also sort of rudderless at this point.
Well, yeah, where are they? I must have asked this question at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
they do feel invisible to me at the moment.
Yeah.
Or is that just my perception, or is just that's our perception
No, I
here in the UK?
think it's just that there's no leader, they feel like, at this point. It might be a former president, but Obama's sort of not stepped forward in that regard. And I think we've seen the Obama coalition doesn't exist anymore for Democrats. They've got to find it other ways. And the ways that they have to make inroads again is with the voters that Trump was able to make inroads for, with Latino voters and men in particular. There was a very mocked plan that the DNC, Democratic National Committee, was going to do. They were going to do this like multi-million-dollar plan of how to talk to men voters, basically. It had like a funny acronym like SAM and different things. And it was just like, it sort of encapsulated what a lot of people see as the Democratic Party's problem, that they're sort of too esoteric, that, they're thinking about this too much. And like, where Trump is just going on,
he just does.
He just goes on Joe Rogan.
He goes
on Joe Rogan, he goes to wrestling matches and different things. He's sort of seen as this, macho guy and different things, whereas Democrats sort of come off as dilettantes in a way. And that's, I think, the problem they're having, is sort of connecting to these voters that actually used to be more Democratic voters, that were, lower income, blue collar voters. That coalition over the past, few decades, Trump has been able to transform that. But Democrats cannot solely win elections just based on college educated voters.
Are there any names emerging for the Democrats? I know it's like 2025 and it's not till 2028, but can you see any figures emerging?
Yeah. Well, I think Democrats do need someone in the short term, and I would look to Hakeem Jeffries, who is likely to become Speaker if Democrats do win the House again. They only need just a handful of seats to flip the House, so that typical shift, I think they're much more favored there. So he would be the first Black Speaker. He's someone that could certainly become a voice, but I think when it comes to running for president, it's a lot of these people that, again, I look back, and of course, there's been a lot of sort of teeth gnashing over, the books that have come out about Biden's decline and whether he should have run. And I really think if he had stepped back and been just a one-term president, as he certainly insinuated that was his plan, you would have had, I think, a very competitive Democratic primary. There's a lot of these people that have been waiting in the wings for sort of a step to take that presidency. And of course, with the just 106 days that we had, it was always going to go to Harris. That was the only way, feasible way that they could do that. Someone like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, I think, would have been able to appeal to those that Midwest, the core of the blue wall that we talked about, that Trump won, Biden then carried, and then Trump won again in Michigan and Wisconsin. So I think she could have certainly played better in places like that, because she's managed to win those voters. I would also, there's several other governors I would watch. Sort of the people that have tried to be the Trump resistance. Of course, in California, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, that's a name we all know.
In Illinois, I would look to J.B. Pritzker as well. He's a billionaire. In fact, his family is heir to the Hyatt fortune. So
as in the hotel.
Yes, exactly. So he's someone that has the money to run, and certainly seems to be making moves as well. Governors also from swing states like Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro is someone I would certainly keep an eye on. He's been seen as a rising star. He was sort of the other finalist to be Kamala Harris's vice president, but there was reportedly a concern that he might have outshone her. I mean, he's someone, he has an oratory that he's Jewish, he's white, but if you close your eyes, he sounds like Obama. He has this sort of cadence in a way. So he's someone that I think, if you're looking for someone that sort of has this sort of
a real presence,
ability to connect, he has a presence when it comes to speaking to voters and things, and he's won overwhelmingly. He's up for re-election as well this midterm election, and even though Pennsylvania is a swing state, Republicans aren't even really contesting it because he's so popular there. And then there's a couple of new senators that I think are worth watching. Of course, Cory Booker has already been his filibuster. I know made news even over here. But there's some new senators that we do see Democrats sort of trying to promote. Alyssa Slotkin was just elected in Michigan. Again, she won her race even as Trump carried the state. She was selected by Democrats to give the rebuttal to, we don't call it the State of the Union, actually, when it's their first address that they give to Congress after they're just elected. But essentially, it was a State of the Union address. So she was selected to give the rebuttal to that. That's typically a very thankless job. And we've had...
we all love those.
Yeah, I mean, like Rubio was really mocked when he did it to Obama because he was drinking water and different things. So you get mocked a lot. But she came off very strong. She was in the CIA before she was elected to the House and then elected to the Senate. So she has a national national security background and things. So she's someone that, again, she won over a significant. There were people that voted for Trump that also voted for her. Ruben Gallego was just elected.
Oh, we're getting a big list together now. There's me saying, "Oh, there's nobody. There's nobody."
There's people, but it's just like it's fascinating. How do they rise up? There's been a lot of profiles written about Ruben Gallego recently, so he is someone getting a lot of press right now. He again was elected to the Senate, even as Trump carried Arizona pretty significantly by about 5 points.
And what about Trump's successor? Or would he run? Would he run again? Whether the Constitution says he can or not. Is Vance the obvious? Or
I mean, I think you look at the vice president is typically the, who you look at next, but that hasn't always happened. Vice presidents have struggled to get elected. It's traditionally, Biden was elected, but there was a Trump in between, George H.W. Bush. So I think Vance is now. Clearly, when he tapped him, I think he saw him as sort of the successor to the sort of MAGA language, and certainly Vance has been very high profile right now in many instances, but again, there's still a lot of people that I think I would certainly look at. I think that there's going to be, senators that might still look at it. I mean, Rubio, now the Secretary of State, though he's been sort of pushed to the side on a lot of foreign policy matters. There's some certainly governors out there for Republicans. I think right now Trump is the undisputed leader of the Republican Party, so it's hard for any other politician to get much oxygen.
So on that inauguration day, sharing the podium, and this is my curiosity really, sharing that podium were the tech bros. He's fallen out with several of them already.
With Elon particularly. It just felt so inevitable. When you have two men with that big egos, like it was inevitable that something was going to happen. But I mean, the tech bros, I think Trump has also, another thing I'm watching is, his family is now pushing, cryptocurrency. They have the Trump coin. There's a stable coin bill that just passed the Senate and things. So, there's real questions about, again, how is the Trump family profiting off of this? And they see an avenue clearly with that tech industry and different things. So, it really was stunning to me. They got better seats than the cabinet. They got better seats.
They were front row. The cabinet was behind.
Cabinet, and members of Congress were relegated to the visitor center.
Last question. It's a big one. What does America look like in 4 years' time to the world, do you think?
I think the thing that I'm struck by with Trump is how fast everything has moved. I think I expected it to move fast, which you asked about this before, but it has been at such a breakneck pace. And that's what I think is just, I almost can't answer it because even if there is a backlash in the midterms, because I think there's a very good chance that the House goes Democratic, so there at least is one stop for him. The Senate, I think, is going to be harder, again, just because the states that are up. But, you also have the courts that he has put. The Supreme Court now is very conservative and leaning to that. So I think there is a real question of, again, when he's sort of pushing the bounds of things and ignoring court rulings and going after judges if they don't rule the way he does. We used the term unprecedented so much in the first Trump administration, but I think there are things where he is pushing the Constitution and the powers of the presidency. I think back to the founder so much, and I think, they designed a weaker executive, and he's not the first president to sort of push these boundaries, certainly. And I think, the president has become the figurehead of the U.S., even though we are supposed to have three co-equal branches. And I think the question is Congress going to exert its influence on things? Because Republicans have even been hesitant to, because when it comes to tariffs, technically the Congress is supposed to approve those. So I think it's how much do members of his own party sort of let him push these things, and or do they exert sort of their congressional authority? And is there a pushback from the courts that will stop these things? So I think we're just in an unprecedented time once again.
Unprecedented and unpredictable.
Yes.
Once again.
Yes.
We shall leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank
for coming to chat to us. It was kind of almost like chatting to a computer, the level of information and facts and figures you threw at me.
Yeah.
And
I've tried to be on holiday for the past week and a half.
And this is the laid back version. Well, that is it for now. Thank you for joining us. Tom will be back for Talking Politics USA on Monday. And remember, you can watch watch every episode on ITVX, YouTube and Spotify, or listen on every podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also get in touch with us by emailing talkingpolitics@itv.com to make sure our experts are talking about the things that matter most to you. Until next time, thanks for joining me.